Hello, everybody. Grant Hunter here with another Product Growth Leaders topic of the week. Steve, I mean, for the longest time, you and I, and actually have some other people on this call have been talking this concept of the product management triad, right? Product strategy, product planning, or technical product management, and product growth or product marketing, right? Yet, over the past decade or so, another trio has come into play with the term of product, and that's sort of the product trio brought to people by like Teresa Torres, Melissa Perry, Silicon Valley Product Group, where we're talking about how do we collaborate across the core product functions, product management, product design, product development. Where did you see this shift from within product management to sort of across product start happening?
I think it probably happened with Scrum. That when Scrum defined the product owner role as a substitute or a supplement to product manager, then the product owner became the third part of that triad. And of course, we've also had this problem for decades of if we don't hire a designer, then we ask the developer or the product manager to do it. So the good part of the idea of the product trio is that the designer, it has a critical role to play.
Incredibly critical. And as we've talked about in other calls, I think underinvested in, even more so than product management is underinvested in.
Agreed.
I'll call out David Mease. David Mease, when we were talking about the product management triad, brought up the trio, and we decided that would be a good back-to-back session. So this week we wanted to talk about the product trio, and on Monday I put this question in the community: what are the keys to successful collaboration across the product trio? Again, product management, product design, and product development. Dominic, you came out with a term that I still think is being debated as if people like it or not. You said a clear RACI with roles and responsibilities and trust. And to some people, it seems like RACI is a bad word.
Is it?
I think what I've seen is there's some people who say just having a RACI isn't good enough. You have to live it and embody it. And if you have truly empowered teams that collaborate, you don't need a RACI. But I would, in my head, say, well, if you have truly empowered teams who know how to collaborate, they actually have an implied RACI and they don't need to define it. So
here's a challenge that from experience, right? We've built a RACI within organizations, and the biggest challenge that we have is each function has its own RACI. I'm like, hey, it's good, right? But no one is actually looking at the relationship between the various RACI metrics, right? And obviously, it doesn't work. So as product managers, we're looking at holistically the various, RACIs and making sure that we are all aligned, and then we can build trust on this overarching RACI, right? Because I don't believe in a one set for all RACI within a function, because it's just inwards looking and it doesn't connect the dots on the outside of the organization.
So RACI to the X being however 3 if it's a trio, whoever else. We need to bring all these things together and make sure we understand. So it's almost even past the trio. The trio is us coming together as a trio to understand each of RACI, so we can make sure that for each initiative, the right people are doing the right things. Is that sort of what you're saying? Awesome. Calvin,
but let me amplify what he said just briefly. I think he makes a really good point that if when development created, when engineers created the product owner role, they said, here's a whole bunch of things other people should be doing. And the other people didn't know about it, right? So as a result, the product manager suddenly has this list of everything no one else wants to do that's been assigned by other people. And I talked to somebody early on who was implementing Agile, and they said, development just told us we need 1 product owner per team. We have 14 product managers now, but we have 50 development teams. So basically, development has just told us we have to hire 35 more people.
All to be serving them 24/7 and not talking to the market.
Correct.
Yeah.
Let
Sorry,
people out to you from
listening to the market.
Correct.
Yeah, the challenge with that, right? It's not a one-to-one. It's about capacity and skills. And the problem I have with Racy is it really focuses on tactical execution and engagement, then ultimately setting the right goals and priorities to consume capacity that generates the business.
Yep.
Right. That appropriately supports the business is a good way to say it. And then, I'm doing some org design right now. We're going to close the transaction, it looks like next week. And I need to figure out kind of who fits where. And so I'm going through a process that I call rah-rah, which is, who's
Roles, accountability, and how high are you?
No, just roles and accountabilities, and capital A, R-A, and then little R-A-H is how I'm pitching it. But really, it's what's the work.
Yeah.
We're going to throw all the tasks and on the wall. We're going to say who's accountable for it, and I'm going to go into a third step beyond responsible and accountable. Do you like doing it?
Yeah.
Right, because this is my opportunity to give folks the role they need to succeed in the direction of confidence and credibility as we integrate teams and cultures. And if I had gone to the and I'm sorry, Dominique, the draconian application without context of a Racy project, everyone would have saw it. I mean, I'm assuming they'll see it as heavy-handed, big company, when really I want to be inclusive and encouraging and integrating. And so Racy is once you've already formed and have a team that's ready for scale. Until they gel as a team, doing the C and the I is trivia and in some ways annoying.
No, I get that. And actually, John, this is where my mind works, and maybe it was because it was 420 yesterday, but Racy is Nanny McPhee. When you don't need me, when you need me but don't want me, I'll be there. When you don't want me but you need a Racy. You're dysfunctional. We should have a Racy because we don't have it. You don't want it, we do it. But when you want me but no longer need me, you have that empowerment of clear roles. You don't need me. Then I don't know. Maybe
I don't know. I've
watched too many kids movies.
Steve threw in. I mean, I'm with you. But Steve threw in storm form norm or whatever. Is that what you did, Steve, in the chat? And that makes sense to me. But I see Racy in some businesses, especially when you start breaking out project management and BAs and it becomes a tool to point fingers and assign blame than truly collaborate, communicate, and inform. It becomes a cudgel, not an implementation approach.
No, and I get that completely. We probably could do a whole week on racing. We actually, I think, we called it roll.
I don't know. I think I just heard Calvin's soul. I just saw Calvin's eyes roll.
Well, I was actually,
oh my God.
I was going to go to him because Calvin, in responding to Brian Weber's communication answer, said yes, in clear delineation of roles and responsibilities. I want you to be able to get your word in, Calvin.
Yeah, I take a different view of John in that my experience is that you have a lot of people with strong opinions but not enough knowledge, and so people that are maybe they're positions of power, politically connected, whatever, steering the boat and really not having enough insight or enough knowledge. And I mean, I've gotten frustrated when people are that just need to be informed. Here's what's going on. What about this? What about this? And I'll go back to something Steve said a couple of weeks ago. He's like, it's anything's easy if you don't have to do anything, if you don't have any responsibility. And I think a lot of times you get input from people that want to be heard, don't have any responsibility, and that just takes you way off track.
Yeah, I get that. Well, I want to sort of pull it back in. We've done a little deep dive on Racy and roles and responsibility. And I think it's key, and critical. And maybe it's not a full racy at 37 activities. Maybe it's just sort of an understanding of accountability to outcomes, right? What do we need from each other that we can go there? Nils Davis, Nils, you're giving May a challenge with your nice list and essay you started for us. So talk to me about the things you were thinking about. You posted some of the community summit on LinkedIn.
Yep. So, well, for one thing, it was a very, I realized, oh, I posted 8 things on my list, which is like very completist of me. But I started from the thing that I feel like is the most, it's sort of a basic, and a basic thing. And it's interesting to contrast it to the racy in some ways, which is that just as human beings, we have to strive in that group of people, all of whom are very opinionated, even though it's only 3 people, to be nice to one another. Don't step on each other's toes. Don't try to do the thing that the other person is the expert in, and expect that your toes are going to be stepped on, right? And don't react badly to that. So that was sort of one of the main things. And then the other big message of my list of 8 things, which we can maybe shorten to be nice and don't be a dick. And you are still the leader as the product person, right? They're going to look for you to be the leader. If the outcome of the discovery, for example, that you're doing is bad, it's not their fault, it's your fault, you know. As a product leader, that is really your role in this, is that you are the leader, and it's your job to get a good outcome. It's your job to make sure that they're doing the right thing. We're focused on the right thing. And it's your job to empower them with the context on the personas and the problems and the value to enable them to do their job the best. That is right. That is right. And I also, going back to the question that you started with asking Steve, where did this come from? Well, I feel like I've always known for 25 years of being a product manager, and even before that we've known that having design and dev, talking to the customer, hearing what the customer has to say, is beneficial, right? Yeah. Because they always have perspectives that we don't have as product people. They might ask questions that we won't ask. They certainly, can start to think about solutions, even though discovery is not the time to do solutions, but they might be thinking about, oh, well, if I went down this path for a solution, it might have these implications. Let me ask about those. Or if I went down this path, would have a different implication. It gives them the time to ruminate on it, right? To start thinking about it in a way that's going to make it easier for them when it's time to do it. That's right. And then I think the other really important thing is the empathy part, right? Hearing from the customer about the pain that they're suffering gives them empathy and helps them create a better solution. I always feel that. So I'm going to date myself. When I was getting my MBA, we had a guest executive, adjunct or whatever, who ran the AS400 program, turned it around when they went from nothing to a Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award. And this is in the 80s, right? And he said the biggest thing they did, Gerstner asked him to take it over. He said, I'm only taking it over if the engineers can go do on-sites with customers to understand, right? So he said the critical thing for them to turn around their quality, their process, was getting the engineers out of the building and out to the customers so they could see. And I think that empathy for the engineers, especially in something like that, right, is critical. The other thing that made me think about is when it's humility in the team, right? Whenever you have a team that works together. I had a team right out of grad school where every single person on that team thought we were the worst person. Each of us thought we were the weakest link. We had so much respect for each other. If you can find a trio where you can build that type of relationship, that to me, that would be unbelievable. Yeah. Nils, thank you for the great list, and good to have you on here again. Nice to be here. David,
I've never been on a team like that. In my teams, it's always, I'm doing a great job. It's just those other jerks who aren't doing their job. And I have a feeling they're saying the same thing about me when I'm not listening.
But that actually, everybody else's job is easy. Yours is the hard one.
Steve, that explains us though, because I think that I'm the weak link and you're the star.
And let's continue to think that.
Yeah.
All right, David Mease, you talked about a shared understanding of some significant degree. Talk to me about where your head is.
It's that empathy thing that we're hitting on here, whether it's the engineers or the design component of the team. We need to know a holistic idea of what we're doing here. You know, what are the problems? What are the pains? How can we step into the shoes of the people that we're solving for and building for? And if you can't, you know, I've been in a situation like that recently. And it's a situation where the design person needed to, you know, if you don't have design and you go right to engineers are the ones that have to have that shared understanding, because as the product person, you need to say, these are the opportunities, these are the problems that we're trying to solve, and we need you to help do the solutioning, as you pointed out, Steve, in your recent article. And in this case, it flowed through design first, and it was such a bottleneck. And when you don't have that shared understanding, you can't get to, okay, now the engineers know what to build and prototype so we can test it out here.
I think, and I said this before on this call, and to what Nils was talking about and what you just said there, David, there's the double diamond design process that people talk about a lot. And the problem is the diamonds touch at the points, right? Like one diamond is done and the next one starts, where really they need to overlap, right? Yeah. We need to bring the designers and developers upstream into the discovery. And we as product management need to stay around a little further to make sure that if there's questions or pivots or whatever, we're there to help provide the context needed for that. I think that.
Yeah, and you know, there's something interesting last week, I think you pointed out, Steve, that I noticed that a lot of times product in a lot of organizations is divorced from business for some reason now, and that seems to be the modern trend. And even when product isn't, though, there also needs to be that understanding of what the business case is here, because you could go off and find solutions that don't serve the business case at all, you know?
Yeah, no, and I think that's one thing that Steve and I definitely, you know, advocate for, is this business and strategic role of product management, right? If we're the ones looking out for business value and return in that type of stuff, and have to be doing it, both in the helping us discover the right problems to solve and focusing on those, but then also understanding the business case when we can do that. Much of how we want to work together is about power and structure. I mean, talk about a you know, way to open up this conversation. Talk to me about what you were thinking about.
So a lot of the times when we talk about the trio, we're talking about the PM, probably the one or two designers on that group, and then the dev team working to solve that thing. So this group of people working together, sometimes a representative from development, is called the trio. But how does the trio work together is another, how do you get to that point? Because, you know, a lot of this comes from Torres's work on continuous delivery or discovery, and thinking through all of those things it's really interesting to see how it could actually be applied, because in order to get there, you need UX leadership, product leadership, and engineering leadership at every level to agree to do this. Because you can say what you want. You can say, you know, as a PM, I want to do this, and your group together wants to do this. That's great. And sometimes you can swing it. But if you have a first line manager or a second line manager who disagrees with this, then nothing's going to work, right? So in order to change this, you need cross-organizational, cross-level alignment that this is the way we want to work. This is the culture we want to establish within this organization. It doesn't have to be, you know, every single, you know, portfolio at IBM, right? But it's within this self-contained organization. This is how we want to work because we know this is effective, right? We know this is the best way to do this, and we're committed to the change that it takes to make it work, because that change is really expensive. In order to get from waterfall to this, you need to teach people how to work together, and that's messy. That takes time. That takes time to build the team's trust together. It takes time to learn how to do a retro. And you got to give them that time, and you have to budget for that time. And so, when your executives come to you and say, why is this taking longer? It's because, well, our engineers are learning to talk to customers.
Yeah.
But you're not delivering. Like, where are my features? Like, well, they're talking to customers. We're going to build better features, and in 6 months you're going to see a 70% decrease in production issues. Do you like that? Well, yeah, I want that now. How do you do that, right? So without leadership alignment at the top, you can't push it. At the leadership alignment at the bottom, it won't sustain itself.
Yeah, and I've been in situations where we had leadership, we had alignment within a pod or wherever, a team, a trio, but it didn't go up. And so you could only get so far with that before you ran into issues, whether it's somebody having to report on something else. I think somewhere in the notes, somebody talked about misalignment, right? The hardest thing is that each of us probably have different, I think it was in the poll. Each of us have, if each of us has different compensation plans and what we're being bonused on, how do we get people aligned and working together? But it made me think about our conversation on toxic bosses and toxic companies. All it takes is one in one of those three, streams, and then it can mess the whole thing up for everybody.
I want to add that it's not about people being toxic. It's about people who have always worked this way, and you are introducing something new, right?
Yeah.
So this is what works, and all of a sudden people are like, let's change this. It's very uncomfortable. This works, so why are you changing it?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not toxic.
It's the why.
Alignment. Yeah.
It's the why, right? Why are you relevant? Why is the change relevant? And I don't know who said it, Grant or you may, but I tell all my folks, get into the bonus. Understand what motivates your upline and tell your stories and share data. And, I had a CEO once tell me, Gatrell, it's only math. And I'm not even sure it's math, it's arithmetic, it's plus minus, it's not even complex. If the math works and it helps me or my peers get their bonuses, then the answer is yes. But if you can't do the math, you can't make a commitment against the math. That's where it gets scary for lots of people, right? And it's scary because if I make a commit, then I've got accountability. And so it's a lot easier to outsource the decision to somebody else, no matter how challenging, troublesome, no matter how it impacts lead time. And so if you can't motivate people with math and understand how they as individuals are motivated, change is nearly impossible.
Yes, and Cory put into the chat, we're at only the math, and I'm gonna go on that. Yes, and that, and maybe I'm going a different direction. Cory, you can let me know. The reality is, if we don't have alignment at the leadership level, if we have alignment at the leadership level, then we shouldn't have to worry about the math, because our math should be the same as their math, right?
Yes, 2 + 2 should equal 4 along all the people that would add those numbers up. If different people are adding up different things and getting different results, by design, I might add, then you've instituted a problem that you can't unwrap.
And as Steve and I look at it, strategic alignment is the tip of the pyramid, right? If we don't have strategic alignment, and I know that Cutler's been having a lot of talk about alignment lately, and I think he's even evolved even since he first put some stuff out there. But ideally, you need to be aligned on what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to succeed and in what direction we're going in. I think there's even more levels of alignment that we could go after that, but I think at a minimum, it's got to be that.
I don't know. I've been thinking about what Cory said, and as a senior operations guy, board member, investor, and the product guy, I'm going to do what I know works until the math and the commitment changes that. When I was a director, I did a lot of let's make sure our math ties out. As a CPO, as a board member, I'm looking at historical transactions. I'm looking at delivery velocity. And if you're going to change how we work, you're going to change how I manage things. then you got to show me the math that says your way is better than mine. And I don't care how long it takes, it's a process. But
It
you've
is.
got to manage that change in the friction of that change so it doesn't impair the expectations of the business.
No, I see that completely. And it makes me think that I need to do a future topic of the week on change management, because change management is such an important topic for product management. We've done them on risk management. So Steve, put that in the queue.
Wow, Steve is a note taker for you, Grant. Wait, who's the star and who's the?
Yeah, no, that was a joke. I was just kidding. It's in my queue already. Just having
he's
fun.
writing it.
All right, Paul Hatala, your answer was lots of dittos.
I starting all the way back where we started with Dominique. It was one of those things where everyone I looked at, I was like, yes, but I kept wrestling. But he did the right thing and put trust at the end of it. Because we can argue about RACI, is that at a task level? Is it what kind of questions are we answering level? Are we answering the questions someone else mentioned about who, I think it was maybe Calvin, about steering the ship with people who don't even know where they're going. So making sure the right people are answering the right questions. So at that level, I see RACI and you got to trust each other. But after all this conversation, what I learned is you really only want to work on a team where everyone is smart, perceptive, and nice. And the rest of it just seemed like.
Is that a purple squirrel? Is that a purple squirrel to do that? To always find teams where people are smart, nice, and perceptive? And
I had teams that were smart, nice, and perspective. They just didn't execute.
Well, that's not very nice.
I mean, but at the end of the day, what really matters? Big ideas or big progress?
yes.
Mhm.
Both.
And then
Good
being
answer.
across the team versus across the levels, that's just
Wow.
that's 3 other sessions. I can't even begin to process that in one question.
No, completely. And I like, Nils, what you added on to John: smart, perceptive, and nice, but can execute. Right? Because it still comes to the outcomes. And I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I'm assuming most of us have worked with people who were smart, perceptive, nice, maybe had great ideas, but never were able to turn those ideas into action and make stuff happen or make decisions with them. I think that's definitely something to think about. Cory, is this your shortest answer, or you had a 1-word answer once, didn't you?
I think I did have a 1-word answer once, yes.
So you said work together. Space,
Yeah.
space, 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 space. 90% of the time.
Yeah. Next. I mean, come on. How many times have you seen a product manager that's working on something a year ahead of time, the designer's working something 6 months ahead of time, and the engineer's working on something that was a bug that blew up yesterday? That's not collaborating. That's not working together. That's working on different streams at different goals at different times. That's not a team. That's not collaborating. So the answer is work together on the same thing, the exact same thing at the same time. There's different degrees of that, right? You see it, the product manager's working on this thing that's a month ahead, or the designer's working 2 weeks ahead, or the engineers, and they have meetings to collaborate about where they are on the schedule, and all that's bullshit. Work together on the same thing at the same time. That's how you build a collaboration culture. That's how you solve this problem.
I like it.
And I guess I would have a counterpoint to that. I feel like the trio, at least as a lot of people talk about it, is really focused on the discovery phase. And phase is, I don't like the word phase because it should happen all the time. And so, yeah, there should always be that collaboration happening. But in particular, the trio is valuable at discovery, in figuring out what the customers, working with the customer, finding out what they're interested in, what their problems are, understanding that. But then I definitely feel that there's lots of times when we aren't all working together, right? Product is going to go take some of that discovery information and turn it into a PRD, let's say, not really a PRD, but write some stuff down, do some more discovery. Design is going to be working on other things. Dev is going to be actually writing code, which I'm not involved in the writing code, and that's 10 times as much work, and there's 10 times as many people doing it as there is product managers. This is my view.
And actually, Nils, I was questioning the 90% because I was thinking, what's the overlap, right? Is it a third, and a third of the time they should all be together, or in a third of the time design and development should be together, and a third of the time we're off on our own. I sort of see where you're going, but I liked Cory's point, because even if we're working on different things, everybody should know what everybody's doing. The collaboration part is as much making sure that we're aligned on who's doing what and where it's bringing us to do that. May, you raised your hand.
One of the questions we had, like, and it doesn't need to be answered now, I don't think it can be answered, is who from engineering is the engineering part of the trio? Because you can't have the entire pod there all the time. And it's usually 1-to-1 to like 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever it might be. And if you don't have engineering leads and they're busy doing management, they can't be that one person also doing discovery, right? So there are questions in terms of operationally, how do you do the trio? And it's interesting. It's worth thinking about, especially within the context of our respective organizations.
I completely agree, and probably to have that successful collaboration in each organization, you need to define who it is and what role they play in that.
And likewise for the other roles as well. If there's one designer for 100 developers, or one product manager working with 6 or 7 teams, then there's not time to collaborate or do any of the work that we really need to do.
Yeah, completely. What a great conversation. I'm going to transition us to the poll, because gosh, that conversation went for a while. On Wednesday, we asked, what is the hardest thing to get right across the product trio? A truly shared vision, a collaboration of equals, clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and maybe we've already spent too much time on that one, and shared knowledge of the market and problem. And right now it's a tie between a collaboration of equals and clearly defined roles and responsibility. But Cory and Dominic, you guys both came in with a truly shared vision. I want to start with you, Dominic, and then Cory, you would put some comments in as well.
All right, I was looking for my mute button. Yeah, I mean, it all comes back to this shared vision, obviously, and I would say, it goes back also to some of the discussion. Hey, let's work on the same thing at the same time. What Cory was mentioning early on, right? I mean, there's the shared vision, really high level, but then on the day-to-day is let's work together on the same thing, as Cory was mentioning. So I think those two ideas, Cory, if I may, are kind of aligned, right?
Yeah, to me, it's how are people working together? They will work together how they're incentivized. It's simple behavior psychology, right? If you're incentivized to create and fix bugs, you will create and fix bugs. If you're incentivized to get this work done by this date, you will get that work done by that date, no matter what it looks like, how it works, or anything else. So if the 3 people are incentivized to do different things in different ways, you're not going to share a vision. Your vision will be separate. You may have the same top level vision as a corporation, but your day-to-day activities and how you work together, you will be going off in different
and the outcomes you're trying to accomplish would be, and I've had this, and it's not just amongst the trio, it's across the whole company. It's with sales, right? If sales is compensated is commissioned on top line and you're bonused on bottom line, huge difference.
The best case is you're working on different things.
Yeah.
The worst case is you're working across things where they're directly in conflict with each other.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen sometimes, and there is no way to unravel that.
I completely agree. And I
can see it just helps with the focus, right?
And I will tell you, I voted for collaboration of equals, although shared vision was it was the 2 I was debating between. May and Paul. Well, Paul, I'm going to obviously have to start with you on a collaboration of equals because of your different circus, different clowns comment. But, I would like to get both of your takes on it.
So I'll go ahead and jump in, and this is one of those ones where I have to narrow it down because otherwise I go with other it depends and write a book. And so just looking at the trio, Because if I start looking within our organization or within our reactions with our organization, our parent company, it goes in all sorts of different directions. So I had to narrow it down to one of the three rings of this circus and just go with those clowns. And within that, I think we have a really good ability to get on the same page with my team, even with our general management. We're still working on it a little bit, but it's not very hard for us to talk about, like I mentioned, about what problems are we solving? Like, hey, let me take that off your plate, but I need your help in these areas. And as long as it starts with our customer said, no one disagrees on what we're trying to solve or the problems. But in the triangle, the other trio that I look at is attitude, behavior, and technique. You get into RACI, you're talking about techniques. And a lot of other things are dealing with behavior, but if you don't deal with that top of the triangle with the attitude of how do people perceive each other, like, hey, I understand what we're all supposed to do, I just don't think you can do it. And so I'm gonna go down this path instead. If that attitude isn't dealt with, that the collaboration of equals, the rest of it just falls apart in my mind.
No, I get it. And Steve, I think when we talk about there's no best practices, there's only, we need to use the different circus, different clowns. Every company is a different circus and has different clowns. That's why every company has different processes and needs and how they do it.
Everyone else has a product zoo. I have a circus.
All right, May, you also voted for collaboration of equals.
Yes, in individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So it's really thinking about how do we work together, and where it becomes even more challenging is the idea of titles, especially in a larger company, because what does it mean to be an equal, right? So at the individual contributor level, you're working together as a small team to build the thing. Great. Next layer up, you might have a director of product, you might have a product lead, you might have a design manager, and you may have 3 engineering leads. That's the next layer. Do they see themselves as equals? Well, it depends, right? This is where egos come in. This is where like a lot of understanding of what the layers look like and being willing to define those layers to collaborate, to solve the problems for their teams. And then at the same time, the motivations are different, right? So and then, at the very top, you've got people who are like, you might have a CTO and a VP of product and a director of design, and that might be your next layer. How do those people work together? Are they considered equals? Well, evidently not, but it's challenging to think about it because you need every layer to support the people who are supporting the people under them, right? Especially as you scale. So those collaboration of equals is extremely difficult because at every layer you also want to empower the layer below you, but in order to do that and to scale, like processes and tools sounds extremely tempting. So I think it's very difficult, especially when you take into account scale.
No, I completely and totally agree. And it goes back to the conversation from earlier about these pipes. It only takes one level in one of those stovepipes to mess everything up. Calvin, you voted for clearly defined. You're the only one on the call who voted for clearly defined roles and responsibilities. I want to give you a chance to change your vote after we totally went all in on RACI in the beginning.
You wait a minute. Let me get this straight. You want to give me the opportunity to change my vote,
or defend it?
Yeah, I'll take the latter. Yes. I'll take the latter for $100 grand.
How about some margaritas from Los
I
Diablo Pozole y Mezcal?
I would trade that for the $100. I'll
Okay.
take it behind door number 2. I guess, and I think with all these questions, we look at them based on our own personal experience. And mine has been that there just tends to be an overlap such that people, let me be frank, people aren't staying in their lane. It's like, if I'm responsible for X and you are you are informed, then don't try and steer the boat.
Yeah.
So,
And there is, especially because depending on the organization and depending on leadership, if they're design centric, engineering centric, or business centric, you can see one of the trio easily getting, and I think this goes partly to May's point, each of the trio could be getting overweighted.
yeah,
view on
it's
that.
funny you mentioned the the type of organization, because I worked for one organization that's more technology bent, and you have the engineers chiming in on pricing.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
No. It's like me trying to write code, as someone that's come up through the through marketing and direct marketing. I've done that years past. You don't want me coding. You just don't. So
no, I get that. So clear roles and responsibility. Now we got a handful of people on the call who had not voted in the poll. So I just want to quickly go through and see where those lie out. John Gatrell, truly shared vision, collaboration of equals, clearly defined roles and responsibilities, shared knowledge of the market and problems. Which is the hardest thing to get right in the trio?
I think one of those is impossible, but I think it's shared understanding, right? Understanding the market. I know you positioned the trio. It really reminds me of a model called the author team. I think Steve taught me that years ago. I think it was BMC or Peregrine or something that had that model, and we adopted it. But the whole concept of shared equals, I mean, we all have inputs, but we don't have equal access, nor do we have an equal opportunity to contribute.
Yeah.
Some roles in and of themselves are execution, right? And I'll give Calvin's example in a development organization. Why the heck should they be doing pricing input?
Yeah.
Right. So, one part of the company comes up with pricing strategy and packaging. Another one delivers that to market and execution model sales.
Yeah.
One part of the organization develops strategy against goals of the business. They take inputs. They understand complexities and dependencies from your peers in engineering. But that's about ordering and prioritizing rather than being equal. It's somebody at some point has to make a decision, irrespective of what we call collaboration. And it's not a cast of thousands showing up for release planning and doing lines and wonderful things every quarter. If you don't have someone that can define and get buy-in on strategy, and you don't have folks that understand that they truly don't own it, they can have an input, but they're not equal. And I think that's where you end up with analysis paralysis. I think that's where you end up with ongoing feature creep or scope creep, because while I was in there, I thought I would do this, or did we think about that? I love taking engineers to market, but I don't take them every time.
Yeah.
I take engineers to market, but I take them to market when I get this. Gatrell, nobody's going to ever want to see that. And I go, okay, let's go talk to a customer that wants it.
Yeah.
I use it as a confidence and credibility building and trust builder, but someone's got to write code and test it. And that code needs to be designed and delivered in a way that actually meets the business requirements, and where you have an overemphasis in equality rather than equity, and delivering appropriate outcomes for the business, you end up in really pretty stuff that maybe nobody wants to buy, or delivered late to market, so the windows disappeared. Now that could be the internet investment banker in me.
Yeah.
Right. I'd rather see Excel than a Jira backlog. Yeah, I don't know anything about Jira. I don't care.
Well, that also
I don't
shows
care
how-
about project or any of these other things. Monday.
You want the Excel
what I
spreadsheet,
want
the
from
business case.
I just want to know if my people, are we on schedule, on time, and on budget?
Yeah.
And if not, let's figure it out. Let's figure out where we're broke. And I've seen integration of cultures that are more business focused and those that are more culturally focused, that they see their, I'm not saying culture isn't a strength, but you got to engineer the right culture to have it, eat execution and strategy and all those other ones. I think we all embrace in buzzwords, and I mean, I want inclusion, I want input, but someone's got to do the work, and that's not an equal relationship.
What's the old what's a camel? It's a horse designed by a committee, right?
Okay.
That was from my business professor, however many years ago.
Now,
David,
I'm actually thinking, just so you know, I'm thinking about in my new org design, putting designers in product.
yeah, I could easily see that. And actually, there's a whole conversation on, the UX research skills they may have. Maybe, there may be times it's better to have them doing the research than a product manager, but we can have a conversation at another call. David Mease, you're talking about the equal thing doesn't work out, and how John sort of was encapsulating a lot of that. I want to give you a chance to add to that and tell me where you would have voted.
I would have voted for the equals. Yeah, because, and I think it's what Cory commented in the chat. Balance might be a better word. In contribution of your subject matter, where you're the expert, right? Yeah. Because it's not equal. At the end of the day, if things are running right, product makes the decision of the direction, of the focus, of the priority.
Yeah, completely and totally agree. Nils, where would you vote?
So I don't remember if I voted or not, but my take on the options is, I think in the trio per se, the roles and responsibilities are flexible, meaning the trio doing things like design and discovery, right? Yeah. When they do their actual work, of course, they're the boss of their actual work. In the context of the trio, our roles may differ depending on the conversation we're having, whatever. So that's not like that's flexible. It's not. It doesn't have to be a certain way, in my view. Yep. A truly shared vision. I think we're building the vision in that trio. That's actually part of what we do. I mean, there may be a vision, a corporate vision, that we all should share, but we all have a different perspective on. That's part of the reason there's three of us. Yeah. Or in the trio. But in terms of the vision on this problem that we're looking at, or even finding out if there is a problem, that's something we're building. So to me, you're building that in the trio. But everyone having an equal or better, as David says, balanced say in what's in the outcome, I think and balance meaning you're bringing your expertise into it, and you're not getting your toes stepped on very much, and you're
not stepping on their toes.
Right. And you're providing where everybody's providing their expertise, and which is greater than where the outcome is greater than the sum of the parts is the goal. And so that's sort of where the equal or balancing comes in. So I'd probably vote for the equal, even though I'd reword it as balanced.
But a collaboration of balance doesn't work. I know. I'm just working with my wording.
I would say that, the goal of sorry, I've made just one quick. I think that the trio your goal with the trio is that it should be like a mastermind in that original literal sense that was in, the Napoleon Hill book, right? Which is this idea that there's a mind that is superior to all the actual physical minds in the room that arises from the collaboration. And if that's not happening, that's a problem. That should be the outcome.
I love that, positioning the trio as a mastermind. I think that's a great way to look at it. May, you were going to say?
I think I want to be careful with the wording of stepping on toes, because what we're talking about here is building a culture where we work together and we respect each other's strengths. And I think it's not about stepping on each other's toes. It's about providing the view of the world from your view of the world, from your set of expertise, right? So when we say the word equal, it's that we are on equal standing when we talk to each other, not that we are equals in power. And I think if we're talking about building towards a place where people talk to each other and work with each other, it's really about the culture, not about this is your job and this is mine. It's this is what we're trying to accomplish together, because we are individuals and we work together and we're trying to accomplish the same goal, ideally. So it's about bringing in your perspective And the more additional perspective we each have together, the better off we are to solve the problems we're trying to solve together.
No, I love that. Steve, before we head to our closing, because this conversation has gone amazingly, did you have one you would have voted for?
Well, I'm really big on roles and responsibilities, largely because I've worked in so many environments where the job of product management is what everyone else doesn't want to do.
Yeah.
So getting really crisp on, I'm going to take the lead on this. I'll provide. I can be consulted on this. I'd like to be informed of that. I mean, I think that is very healthy, particularly when there's so much blur going on, and somebody says, "Well, you need to do that because you're the product manager, aren't you?" Which turns out to be this enormous list of things that product managers shouldn't be taking the lead on.
No, I get it, and I agree. And again, all of those answers are there because they, in my head, could have been right.
Mhm.
So I think we could have been there. Well, between the Monday conversation, the poll conversation, gosh, we're already at time for the wrap up. In our new format, we're looking at key takeaways. What is your biggest learning or takeaway from this conversation? And I'm going to start with Dom.
We all have a lot of various feedback, and actually I'm learning quite a bit because we're coming from different sizes of organizations, and I think the size of the organization will direct a little bit the discussion that we've had today.
Yeah.
And I think we need to reflect a little bit from May's post, I think last week, depending on the size of the organization. I mean, that kind of is what I'm hearing today too.
It depends, right? It always does in product management. Calvin.
I would say it's just a reminder that each of us are bringing in varied experiences based on our own history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. It's sort of where I'm including some of that where I'm going. Paul.
I think my biggest takeaway is that instead of the circus, I should have gone with Animal Farm, because as soon as everyone tries to be equal, you suddenly find out that division of labor is a little bit favoring one group or another, and eventually it turns into anarchy and things are on fire.
So George Orwell is your takeaway. All right, John Gatrell.
I think we all want to be a pig, and I think it's, Nils said something around psychological safety, and when he put that in the chat, that's really kind of my comment around culture. Everyone has to feel safe, and if they know what we're trying to accomplish, and to Calvin's point, they know their role. To David's point, do they know their market? Then we don't need to be equals. We just need to be confident, comfortable, and feel like we're contributing. And I think on a day in and day out, a little bit of what Cory said, just working on the same stuff.
Yeah.
But it all goes back to, do folks feel safe?
Yeah.
Safe they can fail, safe they can contribute, and safe that learning through that failure makes everybody better. And I think May hit something too, that retrospectives are something to learn. They're an investment.
Yeah.
And those require safety too.
Well, and it goes back to even our product survival metrics conversation with Adam Thomas a month or so ago, where psychological safety is one of the key pillars to make successfully survive. So I love that. David Mease.
A lot of what you said, John, I think it resonates so much, and it's almost that these different choices that we had to make, they actually, when you talk about them all, you realize they all kind of point to one common thing. It's but for my I think it's that racy is popular and people like it. I think I assumed it was sort of okay, it's a necessary evil, and you know, we all understand it's complicated, but I see now there's people out there that actually find them useful and welcome them.
Again, we'll do a whole path on that and the different ways you can spell it and what it means. But I like rah now too, John. Nils.
I think I'm going to echo a little bit what John said, which is that, you know, there's a lot of ingredients to the trio, a lot of different ways of applying it. And like I always, there's a, you know, if you is it War and Peace where that starts out? No, it's Anna Karenina. Every happy family is alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Well, product is a little bit like that. Every successful product there's a set of things that a company has done to make a product successful. And if you mess up on enough of those, your product will fail. Well, the trio is kind of the same way. There's a lot of things that go into having a trio be successful or whatever the organization is. And if you mess up on enough of those, the trio will fail. Now, maybe you don't have to get everything perfect, but you have to get a lot of the things working, you know, psychological safety, some sense of equality, some sense of, as May talks about, having the support from above, having everybody aligned with what you're trying to do, you know, having people not be assholes, you know, that's part of psychological safety as well, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're missing any of those things, it's likely to not come out well. So that would sort of be my summary.
I do believe it's the first time ever in Topic of the Week that Anna Karenina has been referenced. And so
it's one of my favorite metaphors, man.
Bonus points to Nils for that. Cory.
How much of our product management jobs are really just traveling ringmasters?
Yeah, herding cats is, you know, was a common thing that
It's
we
a
used to
cat
hear.
circus now with clowns?
Yes,
I'm confused.
yes, we're building it. Cory, you and me. All right. And Steve had to leave early, but my good friend May, your take.
I think I like to go back to something Dom said early on, which is people need to understand I think it's much less so saying what you're responsible for, but understanding and respecting what the other people are good at and what they're responsible for as well. So I think building a culture where that's important, to understand what, you know, who is the rest of your team. I think it's a pretty good start to everything that we talked about.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And for me, well, first I realized that not everybody loves Nanny McPhee as much as I do. So May, I'll get you that reference so you can pick that up. I think the biggest takeaway for me, you know, yes, I love the clowns and circuses, and I think we actually may use that. I might want to use it in a couple of places, but it was the mastermind. It was Nils' comment on how the trio really needs to be a mastermind. And I would suggest any team that we collaborate with, it doesn't just have to be this product trio of product design, product management, product development. Any place where we're working as a team and collaborating, if we do not make it a mastermind, we're failing that team, we're failing that collaboration. And so Nils, thank you for bringing that idea into my head. And what a great conversation on the product trio and how we can make it work and where the challenges are. Next week, we're going to talk about understanding customer value. So Monday, the question will come out on understanding customer value. And we do this every week. Monday, the question goes in. Wednesday, the poll. Friday, these amazing conversations. And I was talking with somebody earlier this week. I don't think every single episode, we're now over 100 episodes. Every single episode, I have learned something. I have changed my opinion on something. It has made me better. And so I appreciate everybody, every voice in the room. Somebody even asked, well, what if you just keep the same 6 people? I'm like, no, because I want fresh voices coming in. So David Mease, you know, you've been a great voice that's been added in the past few weeks. Thank you for that. Paul Hatala, great to have you back. Dom, Calvin, Cory, all of you guys. Nils, great to have you back. Gatrell, where have you been in May?
Running a production environment that's down too much. How's that sound?
that sounds like a plan. Well, thanks to everybody in the conversation. Thanks for everybody who answered in the community. We'll see you guys next week in the community. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.